Maybe green's getting a little crazy, but I promise it's going to be okay. Hey everybody, Espira, and we're back with more FBO2 Blazing Aura coverage for Fusion World, going over all of the reveals. It's been a little bit of a minute since the last video, and a big reason for that is because, well, we're about to see a lot of the cards kind of made for inconsequential reveals, and I didn't really feel like it warranted a video to talk about. But now we've got a bucket load, I think over a dozen different cards to talk about here. So let's get a greater look at what we're going to expect with set 2. We're picking it up right up from where we left off last time, where they started with some extra card reviews. And this time around, we've got Time Ring, a 1-cost blue extra card. Activate main. Look at the top 3 cards from the top of your deck and place them at the top or bottom of your deck in any order. Then draw 1. Very specifically, this works where you take the entire 3 stack and bottom deck them or top deck. Just something to keep in mind, it's not like a direct scry. It is specifically taking those 3 stacks of cards. There's a couple of reasons as to why this works out really well. One, in Goku Black, it just gives you more dig to be able to find your pieces, which is very important. Probably the most beneficial leader to be able to get support via this card. Alternatively, it does work with the new Zamasu we're getting, where it allows you to stack your deck for the life heal. I don't personally love the card. I think it's very mediocre. I think it naturally works well for a deck that's very specifically looking for something. But oftentimes you're able to find these kinds of effects on actual bodies that can be comboed, and the fact that you're missing that, in my opinion, does leave to be desired. But it has the Patara trait, it has the Rumi trait, there's some searchability there. I don't know. I don't think it does anything crazy for you, but if you like the added consistency, by all means. Next up for green, we've got Senzu Bean, and I was wondering for the longest time if they were going to introduce Senzu Bean into this game. For those of you guys who don't know, this was a card in Masters, but it was a 1-cost blue card that would give one of your cards 5k for the turn, and then it also untapped 2 energy. Here we've done just the 5k boost, so it's a 2-cost green extra. Activate to battle. Choose your leader up to one of your battle cards, and it gets 5k power for the turn, which is super important for green, specifically because the way that you beat down non-Broly decks at the moment is just by going giga wide. So green having the option to just save itself 4 or 5 cards a turn by being able to just do this is massive. So much so that it probably warps the curve in which green currently plays. Then it has an activate main for 3. And I want to specify that this is an additional ability and an additional cost, and you can't conjoin them. So you can either choose to use the activate main or choose to use the activate battle, different timings. Essentially, think of this as 2 cards as 1, and you get to choose when you want to use their ability. So for 3 energy, so it's 3 plus the 2. So for 5 energy total, 2 to use the card, 3 to pay the additional cost on the activate main. Add the top card of your deck to your life, so a little bit more life gain, because why not? To be fair, I think this is more for flavor. 9 times out of 10, you will not be using Senzu Bean and paying 5 energy to gain a life. But there are some niche cases where maybe you do actually do so. I don't think those cases are all that many, but it being there is flavorful, and sometimes you do get that benefit. But I cannot rest that the 5k buff is huge, especially since you can also choose battle cards. So if there's a card that you really want to keep on board, then this just extends the longevity of that card, which is absolutely massive. I don't think it's necessarily going to break green, but I think it's a necessity, especially when we account for how much faster and more aggressive red and yellow are getting. Next up, we've got yellow's Blue Awakening Power, which I'm so excited for, specifically because I have a lot of high hopes for Vegeta. He's a leader that untaps 2 at the end of the turn, untaps 2 energy specifically, and so having more battle tricks allows you to really extend on how much the deck can do. 2 cost, 1 specified yellow. Activate main, choose up to one of your opponent's rest mode battle cards with a cost of 6 or more and KO it. So now yellow finally has a way to actually remove big bodies from the board. And then we've got the activate to battle. Choose your leader or up to 1 of your battle cards, and it gets 25k power for the battle. We already know with Gigantic Meteor how powerful 25k can be, and while green does have the benefit for doing for 1 energy, Vegeta essentially will always have this as an option, given that he'll be able to untap 2. I think this is a very powerful card, especially when it comes to combating green, which right now has very low amount of interactability across all the colors besides green itself. I do think green will take a peg back going into set 2, given how much faster the different decks are becoming. But I do think having the option is important, and the 25k buff is obviously very welcome. You can use it aggressively, or you can use it defensively. That flex is very nice. Then we come on to the biggest reasons as to why I wasn't really covering last week the new cards that we got, and that's because we got a bunch of super combos. Nothing crazy there. The only difference in the way that they work are the different characters that they showcase. So here we've got Ribrianne, which Bandai, that's actually Brienne the Chateau. So just, by the way, wrong form, but you know, whatever. Who needs quality assurance? Anyways, We got 4 super combos, each in one color. They're all 7 cost. They're all 15Ks. They all have 10K combo with the ability that on your opponent's turn, if you combo with it, you get an additional 10K, and they all have super combo on them. Ribrianne specifically has Maiden Squadron, Universe 2, and Tournament of Power as her chosen traits. Then we've got Jocko, who has the Alien trait. We've got Old Kai, who's got the Supreme Kai trait. And then finally, we have Android 16 with the Android trait. The funniest thing here is that technically, Ribrianne has more usability than any of the other ones because you can play her using Top Ku's ability. Obviously, don't do that, but I think it's really funny and probably something I'm going to do on stream one day just for the fun of it. We also got additional SR reveals, which are very exciting because a lot of them are very impactful. We saw how impactful they were with the first set of reveals a few weeks ago, and that continues over here. Kicking that off, we've got Android 17, a 3-cost 25K 0 combo, but we'll see what he does. Permanent, your leader with Universe 7 in its special traits gets 5K power. As far as the red leaders we currently have, that includes Beerus, it includes U7 Goku, and it includes Top Ku. So turning your leader into a 25K, both offensively and defensively, is absolutely massive, especially when you consider that he has an additional permanent. If your leader is awakened, this card can't be KO'd by skills of your opponent's battle cards. Now, of course, that doesn't prevent you from negging the card. It doesn't prevent you from bouncing the card, but it does prevent you from being able to get rid of it, utilizing some of Yellow's abilities or some of Green's abilities, and sometimes Red, the 3-drop SR Goku being one of the biggest things that could potentially be trying to get rid of this. This card's really good, especially when you consider that you can play this card off of Kefla, so now you played a 25K attacker that drew you a card, played an Android 17, both of them are 25Ks, turns your leader into a 25K, and you're attacking with all that aggression for that turn. And then if your opponent wants to counter aggro you, will now have to work even harder because your leader is now a 25K until they get rid of this Android 17, which if they can't use removal for it, they're just going to have to attack and hope you don't out combo them. I think it's incredibly solid, really good, and it's just adding more to the suite of cards that make me very spooked by Red. I think Red is going to be an incredibly scary strategy, if not the most scary strategy going into set 2 format. Continuing the SRs for blue, we've got Zamasu Fused, and do note that this is different than base Zamasu. As far as the game is concerned, anytime it talks about specifically a Zamasu, it does not include Zamasu Fused. Zamasu Fused is to Zamasu as Vegito is to Goku and Vegeta. It's essentially a different character. Unless a card specifically says include Zamasu in the name, it is not talking about this Zamasu, as we can see from his own skill down in the when KO'd. He's a 4-cost 25K attacker with 5K combo. When attacking, if you have 7 or fewer cards in your hand, draw 1 card. Very nice. And then when KO'd, play this card from your drop in rest mode. Then you can't play Zamasu Fused for the turn. So for some reason, if you're able to play non-fused Zamasu, you could totally do that. Honestly, really sticky. And I think a big thing about set 2 is sticky. And we're going to see even more in a second. Very much like sticking to the board and give themselves a lot of ways to be able to do so. With Red, we got the N17. With Zamasu, he comes back and then you have to get rid of him essentially twice to permanently get rid of him, which is obviously very much in theme with Fused Zamasu. So we're seeing more and more how these cards play into just making it harder for things to get removed. And this is scary when you combine that with the fact that cards are stickier and the game is getting faster by giving you more ways to deploy cards. We're seeing that with things like Kefla and stuff like that. So it puts the game in a very interesting position, and all by itself probably lowers Green down a peg because of how much battle protection is present in the game. Obviously, Green can just attack with its big 45K attacker that may have removed this Fused Zamasu, but the fact that it needs to put in that additional work makes it harder. So I do think across the board, everything that every color is doing right now or looking to do in set 2 is very much mitigating a lot of what Green is doing in set 1, which will hopefully really shake up what the format is going to be. Next up, we've got Hela's 4-cost 25K 10K combo, so very nice numbers there. On play, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards with 30K power or more, and it gets minus 20K power for the turn. This card, I feel so iffy about this card specifically because a lot of the cards that you want to get rid of are more so 35Ks. And the fact that she can't get rid of a card by herself because they need to be 30K power at selection. Inherently, the way she works, she cannot get rid of a battle card. She can get them close, so she combos really well with Beerus. Her and Beerus will always get rid of a 30K, as long as you don't neg with Beerus first. Don't make that mistake, even though I'm sure a number of people will. But it's just the fact that standalone, she takes your entire turn and cannot remove something off the board unless you're specifically playing Beerus. makes her a little bit iffy. And then when you try to think about the cards that you want to play on 30, for the most part, the only 30Ks people are playing are vanillas, except for like the 5-drop Gohan that the green deck plays. So it doesn't feel phenomenal. And oftentimes you're going to be able to combine other cards to get there, right? Instead of playing Hellas, you could neg 10k and then use the Goku. But now there's a lot of cards that have when KO'd abilities that prevent them from being KO'd or bring them back or something like that. So maybe hard negging is where you want to be. From the looks of it, it definitely seems that they're pushing more God of Destructions into what would probably slot best with Beerus, which is nice to just have him be able to extend his usability in that way. Then we have a card that took me a while to land on what I thought about it. 3-drop Master Roshi is a 5k, 10k combo blocker with the permanent. If this card is in rest mode, this card gets 20k power. At first, I'm like, oh, this is obviously terrible. It is so easy for red to get rid of this. And then when you start considering that people don't play card games like absolute buffoons and you just would not play this against red, then you start thinking about its usability. I'm like, okay, in what scenarios do I want a 25k? Oftentimes that's a 25k vanilla and I'm always attacking with it. I very rarely spend my time not attacking with my 25k vanillas that are on board. So, okay, most of the time this card's gonna be in rest mode. It's essentially a vanilla, but it has the benefit that in some matchups, it can become a blocker in a pinch and I don't lose combo power for that sake. So all this card really says is effectively, I am not a blocker against red. In every other scenario, you're essentially the same. Probably good enough if you don't specifically need the Frieza tag, the Frieza name, the Frieza clan, any of those things specific to the vanillas that you're playing in your yellow deck. I actually do think there's value in playing a Master Roshi. Just don't be an idiot. Don't expect him to be a blocker against red. Next up, we've got Goku Black, which is always a lot of fun because naturally it synergizes with the Goku Black leader in set 1. And this is a good one. 4-cost 30k, 5k combo when attacking. If you have 7 or fewer cards in your hand, which I hate that condition, but that's fine. Choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards that cost 2 or less and place it at the bottom of its owner's deck. Very solid. Good removal, gets rid of blockers. Honestly, with how good yellow is and how it's going to continue being good moving forward, just having the ability to get rid of a 2-drop is so much helpful, especially with the fact that blue can often struggle with white boards. And then we're going to see another SR afterwards that can combine with this one to actually make it a more impactful ability. So this card's solid, super good stats. In Goku Black, you can play it for 2 energy. So honestly, I like it a lot. I'm a big fan of this card. Nothing insane, but very solid card. Then we've got Paragus BR. So unlike the starter deck Paraguses, which come from the original movie line, this is from the Super Broly movie. 2-cost 20k, 5k combo. When KO'd, if you have 6 or more energy, add up to 1 Broly BR from your drop to your hand. At the moment, the only Broly that this gets is the 8-drop Broly from the starter deck. Maybe we get some more Brolys in set 2. We probably do, because I presume you would never just print this card without actually printing another Broly. Regardless, this card's pretty bad. We'll have to see how good any other additional Brolys are, but the fact that it's a when KO'd ability means that your opponent is effectively deciding when this is able to go off. It's a 2-drop, it's a 20k. This effect is very rarely going off when you want it to. You're spending 2 energy to potentially get nothing out of it. So I would recommend not, but hey, maybe. Back to the SRs, and this time we got a yellow one, 3-drop, a 20k, 5k combo Vegeta with the permanent opponent's turn. All of your rest mode battle cards can't be KO'd by your opponent's skills. That is such an incredibly gross ability, especially when you consider that a lot of the best ways that people were dealing with yellow is the 3-drop Goku, is the board wipe secret rare from green, or just lots of cards from green, the entirety of green. This effectively shuts down the entirety of green because now they just need to focus on combat to get rid of stuff on your board. It's absolutely gross. There's an argument to be made that you lose out on Frieza's awakened ability by having to not restand things if you want to protect them. But at the end of the day, most of the time when I'm not restanding cards is to protect them in the first place, more so than have any other usability. Sure, sometimes you get blockers, sometimes you get additional combo power, but for the most part, it's to protect my cards. So the fact that this effectively says, hey, if my opponent's lining up for a big removal turn, a big Ginyu board, a big, what have you, I can just keep them all in rest mode, and now my opponent needs to spend combat to get there instead. It makes it way harder to deal with yellow. And while I don't know that this card's a 4 of, its presence on board is going to be one that's going to make people play it way differently and will force even red to go more into more negging cards off board for at least a short while, instead of just purely relying on the 3-drop Goku, which is arguably probably the best card in the deck. On top of that, he does have an on play. Add up to 1 card from your life to your hand, then play up to 1 battle card with a cost of 1 or less from your hand. Nothing crazy, but the fact that you're able to extend and play a cantrip, play a blocker, play a, anything. It's just that nice extension that's able to get you even deeper. I don't even know if Vegeta needed that, but he's a self-awakener that allows you to play something else. He could play a Bulma, which is nice. And then obviously there's a synergy that the Vegeta is a 3-cost that allows your Bulma to actually draw a card, and it's in rest mode, so it's not getting removed by abilities. And then if you rest mode your Bulma, she's not getting, like, it's a lot of synergy that works really well together, man. Yellow's going to be really good. Then we take a little break from main set cards. We actually got a promo reveal as well. So this is 4-drop Sun Gohan Adolescence. He's a Saiyan Earthling Universe 7 Tournament of Power. 20k 5k combo, permanent. Your turn. If your leader is awakened, this card gets 20k power. In Universe 7, that's a 4-drop 45k. In Starter Coup, that's a 4-drop 45k on offense, 25k on defense. And in Top Coup, that is a 1-cost 40k. Card's really good. There's not much else to say about it. Card's very solid. I mean, it's a 4-cost Frieza. It can restand itself. It's just worse on the fact that it doesn't have the 40k on defense. But do we care? No, we don't. This card's incredible. It just goes to show that, sometimes we're really going to get some very, very strong cards in our pre-releases. Already pre-released Goku was a card that is definitely viable in Green Ramp. And Gohan is going to be a card that at minimum is a 2 to 3 of in your red decks, because just having that push power on a 4-drop body is incredibly powerful. Back to the main set, and we've got Vegito. So more Vegito, more base Vegito. And the fact that we're only getting base Vegito makes me feel that we're probably going to get something like Super Saiyan Blue Vegito over in the secret rare for blue this set. Speculation aside, no fusion mechanics. And I'm so sad, man. Bandai, if you're watching this, for the love of God, give us fusion mechanics, man. It's so thematic. It feels so good. But regardless, Vegito is a 3-cost 25k 5k combo, has a permanent on your turn. If you have 7 or fewer cards in your hand, reduce the cost of battle cards in your opponent's battle area by 1. So it does seem that blue is getting the One Piece card game black mechanic of manipulating their energy costs, which is pretty important for blue because a lot of blue's removal feels really bad when it comes to specifically the numbers that a lot of their stuff can hit. Your 2-drop removals can only hit 2 drops. Your removal suite often only hits up to 5-drop if we're considering Trunks. Or Scythe can hit like 4 drops, even though Scythe can oftentimes be a really good card. So the fact that, blue is going to get more ways to expand the way its removal works, especially since a lot of it's bounced back to hand, which isn't super good. So already you're very restricted in how good your removal is, and your options for targets aren't that great. Being able to at least expand those targets is nice. It also combos with his on play, where you get to choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards with a cost of 1. Effectively, whenever he's on board and you meet the condition, it's 2 costs. And place it at the bottom of its owner's deck. That definitely helps with board control. I think it's definitely the type of card that blue needed. I'm not sold that it's solving a lot of blue's issues, but I think it's definitely the type of card that blue wanted, in as far as being able to help it mitigate board control and expanding the range of options that the deck has. And being a 25k attacker is just good stats. 8-drop 45k 0 combo power Cell. We already knew an 8-drop Cell was coming with Cell Jr., which allowed itself to be free played if this card was on board. And boy, is this a card. Has an on-play ability, place 3 cards from your energy in your drop. That's a cost, but we'll talk about how that's not all that big of a deal in just a moment. Choose up to 2 of your opponent's battle cards, KO them, then add the top card of your deck to your life. Huh? Bro, that's... So at the end of the day, Reed's really busted, right? But I think if we take a step back, we'll realize how it's probably worse than it seems, but also better than it seems. So in terms of the worst as it seems, there is the fact that a lot of cards on boards are very sticky. We saw yellow, blue, and red have a number of cards that don't actually allow themselves to get removed. And all those decks have gotten faster. So it is harder for green to actually get to 8 energy, at least with the cards that we have now. So in that force, the 8-drops need to be good because it's really hard to get there. That said, right now, green does need more game enders. Like I've seen a lot of people compare this with Broly because naturally it's the other 8-drop, but they do different things. I don't think green has an issue closing out games as much as it has issues stabilizing. So this will probably become the 8-drop of choice, specifically on the back that it clears up board really nicely, and it also gains you that life buffer to hopefully see another day. Now, when talking about how this card is probably better, well, when you consider that you place 3 cards from your energy to your drop area, at 8, that actually puts you to 5, which allows you to use your cell leader ability to go back up to 6, and that energy is in active mode, which means you're able to have Gigantic Meteor as backup. And then probably the most busted thing is when we rewind to the last video where we talked about Cell Jr. A 2-cost 15k, 10k combo with a permanent. If you have a Cell battle card with a cost of 8 or more in your battle area, you can use and play this card from your hand without paying its cost. So it's a free 15k that you're able to play that has an on play add up to 1 extra card from your drop to your hand. So now you're in a position where you can charge Gigantic Meteor in the early game because it's usually a dead card. And then you ramp up to 8. You blow up your energy. One of those energies is Gigantic Meteor. You play Cell Jr. for free. You're able to get that back in your hand. That's very strong. And then that doesn't even account for the fact that you can also use Cell Juniors as very powerful attackers. It is not unlikely that you can set up your end game hand to be a drop Cell, 2-drop Cell Junior, maybe 1 or 2 of them, and then instant Kamehameha. So now you're in a position where you play a drop Cell, you remove 2 things from your opponent's board, you gain a life, you swing at your opponent for 45k. Also in that process, the 3 energy you blew up had instant Kamehameha. And then you play Cell Jr., pick up instant Kamehameha, attack your leader, use instant Kamehameha. Now you got a 30k attacker. Then you play another Cell Jr., pick up the instant Kamehameha from your drop, swing at your opponent's leader, use instant Kamehameha. Now you have a 30k attacker. So effectively, the lines available to the 8-drop Cell is specifically not only really good at stabilizing, but potentially presenting one of the most powerful end game finishers in the game in lining up 2, 3, and who knows, maybe you're crazy and you have all 4 Cell Juniors in your hand. 5 attacks for 45k, 30k, 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 30k. That's not to include any additional combo you might have in hand. That is absolutely nuts, especially when you consider that you can set up your energy as a second hand for those Cell Juniors to go in. And even after all of that, you potentially still have 1 energy up if you're playing Cell. It's very good. It's very good. At the end of the day, I do think green is still in a position to struggle based on the fact that it's an 8 cost and it's going to be hard for green to become an 8 cost, at least for now. We still have a lot of green reveals to go. But nevertheless, this is going to be very frustrating. And I think the most egregious part is the existence of Cell Jr. that combos with Cell and not just Cell by himself. And then finally, to close out our final reveal of the day, we've got the 5-cost 30k, 10k combo Rumi, which is the God of Destruction of Universe 10. On play, choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards with 30k power or less and KO it. Nothing crazy there. It's a removal option for 5. Odds are you're probably doing better things for 5. I think I'd rather play a double strike and give something minus 20k, especially with the fact that a lot of cards out there have battle protection, and the best thing red could be doing is negging cards because it won't proc on KO abilities. Nevertheless, I think it's a good option for the deck. It allows Beerus to be able to get rid of 40ks, so that's nice. So I think it's just a nice card to exist and does flesh out to this whole God of Destruction thing that's working out for set 2. Lots of exciting cards. Like I said, I think there's a lot of spooky cards that exist, but honestly, while I do think things like Green Cell look and read kind of nutty, I think the biggest scarier pieces are the things that red and yellow are getting. They very much read like incredibly powerful, and red specifically is lining up once again to be the scariest color in set 2. So I'm excited to see what next week's reveals have. And that's it. I'll get you guys on our next one.